without an imagination. You're simply too dull for me to do unto others, they say. Reach deep in your heart, you'll see. I'm trying to tell you something, I'm not sure that you'll follow. The surface, it has no depth now. It must be that you're shallow, and you must know that I can see right through the petty games you play to steal away the days that we made. You dine in those fancy restaurants, you think that you know fine food. I guess I'm a pot pie kind of guy. To me, they taste just as good. I'm trying to tell you something, I'm not sure that you'll follow. The surface, it has no depth now. You think that you're Hollywood, and if you should consider this an inconvenience, tell me now and I'll bow out. I'll be on my way. Karma tells me it's not right, but there's something that just can't find. It's you, babe. It's you, babe. I know I may not be your speed, an ordinary Joe. Indeed, that's me, babe. That's me, indeed. I love the taste of cool fresh air. It's safe to say I've been there. The clouds in the sky. Tell me you notice them. You got no imagination. Is that something you might see? To do unto others, they say. You be nice to include me. I'm trying to tell you something, I'm not sure that you'll.
Good
Hello.
evening. Welcome to Tux TV. I think everything looking good out there in the verse, in the Twitterverse. I mean the Twitterverse and well,
you stream
I
to
am your
Twitter?
host, Jimmy Tux. Yeah, YouTubeverse and Twitterverse, and hopefully everything's functioning. All right. Looks good. All right. Welcome to Tux TV, Oz. You
Thanks.
were on like this long once.
I was?
Yeah, you came on with like you look like you were Lawnmower Man or something.
Lawnmower Man.
Yeah.
What happened? Was my hair all messed up?
No, I think you were testing out like some sort of
Oh, mask. It's probably Trump.
was
Or
it
was it
yeah, Trump.
Spider-Man?
Yes, that's true. Let me put the comments on
I think Justin was in here.
I don't see anybody here. I went up and kissed the missus goodnight. And let's see. How do I do
Did
that?
Mark get the link?
I don't know.
I didn't save it. Oh, it's right there.
I only see you.
You want?
Great programming here. Huh? All right.
I sent it to Mark, but Max wants to join too. Hopefully, we get some of those Muslims
Mark's
in
here.
here.
There's Mark. And let me see if I can get the...
Hello. Thanks for me coming on. Thanks for having me on. I don't know why I said that.
Welcome, Mark.
And thanks for sending me the links, Ozian. I really appreciate it. I just finished the stream and
There's
totally
Max.
just uncharitably did not link to anybody, like redirect to anybody, because apparently I can't do my job. Oh no, Max, where's Max?
Max was
so
there.
I really apologize for that, Oz. I was going to. I always forget one thing at the end, so I either forget to thank my subscribers, forget to like and subscribe, or I forget to redirect. I'll do one thing every single time that I'll forget. It's become traditional at this point.
Well, I planned on 90 minutes for my stream. You see how well that goes.
Yeah.
I've done that so many times. When we do debate reviews, we've had to say, hey, it's 2 people unless somebody from in the debate is with us, because if we get 3-4 people, it will go on like 6 hours. Like, we just can't, the more voices you have, the longer it takes. And that's something I've had to come to terms with and doing YouTube content. Hey, John. Hey, Earl. Earl's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Earl is my YouTube crush. She's winning me over.
Kind of weird, but sure.
Ember, hey, don't worry, Ember's my YouTube crush too. So,
but everybody loves it.
I whore around. What can I say?
I can relate.
Yeah.
You player.
So, all right, looks great. James Apperson's here.
I haven't talked to James in ages.
I saw him earlier on. Who's on Myth Vision? Myth Vision had a big stream earlier today, and he was there.
Yeah, I like Myth Vision.
Got really a shout out from Derek. And all right, well. Let's do we want to do a little warm up before we dive right into
well, I was hoping Samir would come in so we could talk about the theological argument. Like, I was really hoping that would happen.
I could ask.
Yeah. You said Mia?
Samir.
Oh, Samir.
That was the person I was talking with. They raised some objections to do with sort of intelligence created and books being compared to DNA and, the cabin in the woods kind of thing, which is the watchmaker analogy. That's essentially what it is. So the watchmaker analogy goes something like, if you're walking along a beach and you look down and you see a watch, you immediately know that it was created by an intelligence. And the whole problem with that is that for a start, we know that watches are created by humans, so that's why it was created by an intelligence. And the other thing is that you don't notice the grains of sand next to it, but that was created by an intelligence as well. So you can't just assume because something has a will or has these properties that it was created by an intelligence. And I wanted to go on and sort of say, well, the other thing is we see wills and intelligences sort of emerge all the time without sort of being created in that way, like a watch gets created because you're just born kind of thing. Natural processes create intelligence all the time. And yes, they come from an intelligent thing, which is another person, but it's a natural process. It's not an intelligence putting it together with intention like a watch does. So, but I wanted to talk to him about all that and see what he had to say. It's disappointing that he didn't show up.
The primary reason I wanted to have the stream to follow Oz's stream was in the pre show to the debate in the chat. There was a conversation going on about whether God was honest during Genesis 1 and during his creation. And I have a bit of a 9 points in which I don't believe that God necessarily was lying, But I don't believe he was telling the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help God. And so Max was like, could you throw me the link? I was like, I don't really have a link. I just kind of have it up in my head. So yeah.
So we're talking about Genesis 1. What, Genesis 1 to Genesis 3? Is that what we're sort of saying? Yeah, yes. Gotcha. Okay.
Because yes. I thought of this before, and I have one that regularly comes to mind, which is the lie about the tree. And that one I do consider like a lie.
Okay. Yeah. Let me get a link for everybody. What version are we talking about? NIV, okay?
NIV, I think probably the ESV. I always use King James Version whenever I'm.
Well, you've just told me 3 versions that you want.
I know.
Just give me one version.
You can do any version. It doesn't matter.
NIV it is. NIV it is. Okay.
NIV.
So there's a link.
When I do the parallels, I always look at ESV first, NIV second, and King James Version first or third. Depends.
To be honest with you, it depends who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to an evangelical, I usually go to King James first, to be honest with you, because that's the one they usually are using. It might just be the version of evangelical that I run into a lot, but it's a good bet. If I'm talking to somebody like Anglican or Catholic or something, yeah, NIV or ESV first, yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And I think that the conversation started because I was responding to the tag argument, I believe, where people say, like, you can't have rationality unless God exists or something like that. So I think Max asked me what my rebuttal would be to such arguments.
That's a presuppositional argument. That's a presup.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it doesn't need a refutation. It's a presupposition.
I understand. So he asked me what my response would be to like somebody like Darth Dawkins. I understand it's a presupposition. I just reject it because it's just a presupposition. So my argument would, I said, well, my argument would be something like, well, if God exists, then God would be in any test tube. And if God is in any test tube, I don't know if what I'm measuring is God or what's actually in the test tube. So you basically can't have knowledge if you can't differentiate between a deceitful God or an honest God for what's in the test tube. So you have to sort of presuppose that God is honest. So if God was dishonest, you could never have knowledge. So the only possible world I can know that I could have knowledge is one in which a God doesn't exist. It could be interfering with every test tube. So that's sort of where I was going with the argument, sort of as a not a rebuttal, but sort of as a parallel argument to.
Yeah. So the thing about presupposition, you've got to realize this, is that rationality and intelligibility flow from the nature of God. Okay, so that's what they say. They presuppose that God, that rationality and intelligibility flow from his nature. And because of his nature that they're presupposing it is like it is only truth already. Right? So they kind of it's built into that presupposition that God is an honest God, as you've described it, right? It's built into that presupposition. But thank you. I now understand how we got to was God honest in Genesis 1 to 3. Yeah. No, I get you.
Yeah. So, but then they're always going to have apologetics for each one of these 9 claims you're going to have. I know they will. They'll have an explanation for why it's not really deceitful or whatnot. And
well, the way that I handle, if you want to hear, I can tell you how I handle presuppositional apologetics in, rationality, logic. Morality has to come from a God kind of thing. And that is sort of basically you would presuppose that rationality and logic exist, or they are things that we use, but not presuppose where they come from. They would then reject the presupposition of their origin and sort of demand, because you're quite within your rights to do so, that they give an accounting for why they claim that their presuppositions. Now that turns bad very fast because they don't want to actually back up that claim. It's a presupposition. But you're free to reject it if they are presupposing it, like any presupposition. The problem with rejecting my presuppositions that they actually exist is that my presuppositions, if you say, well, logic doesn't exist, it's like, well, then like you can't be using logic then.
Yeah.
Or rationality. Well, then if you reject that it exists, then you can't use it. Like, and then continue the conversation without using rationality. It doesn't work. And they acknowledge that they think they exist. They presuppose that as well.
Well, they would claim they're not presupposing that logic exists. They would say they presuppose that God exists, and God grounds logic without making that connection, because you need logic to even like make that argument.
Correct.
You need logic to tie the two claims together. So you can't use logic to justify that God grounds logic. It creates a circular argument. But they'll say, well, some circular arguments are virtuous. So this one's true because it's virtuous.
Yeah, but they've got to acknowledge that it does actually exist, regardless of where its foundation is. It doesn't matter where its foundation is. If they want to use it, they validate my presupposition, because I'm presupposing it exists. Just like the senses, I presuppose that my senses exist. If you want me to listen to you, then you're validating that presupposition in and of itself. You're saying, hey, I validate that because you want me to use that which I presuppose in order to engage with you. So you are already validating that presupposition. What I don't have to do is validate your presupposition of where those things come from. I don't have to validate that. And even if I don't validate that, we can still have a conversation because I presuppose we actually have them. So it's that fine line between going, well, I validate that they exist. I'm not going to validate where they come from. I'm not going to do that.
And I think it's a more virtuous argument anyways, because so it is circular. And so I would say it's more virtuous to make a more humble claim about things we can actually observe about reality, that logic comes from minds come from biology. We evolved into the state we are. So we evolved to have a language we developed called logic. So yes, it's circular, but I would say that's a more virtuous argument, that presupposing something exists that you can't demonstrate is actually a thing that ever existed. So I can just go from the Big Bang to...
All knowledge goes back to one of three outcomes, and none of them are satisfactory.
Right.
That's the Munchausen trilemma. It either goes back to a circular argument, a dogmatic assertion, or an infinite regress. And the presup has just chosen the dogmatic assertion one. It is because it is. That's essentially what they've chosen as their foundation. They've got no more stable a foundation as anyone else. They will just say, hey, it's a special exception to the Munchausen trilemma, when it isn't. All it is dogmatic assertion. They're just saying it's not. And it's this weird position where they think that if they don't acknowledge that it could be wrong, then it must be right. And that's a really dodgy attitude to have, because not acknowledging that you can be wrong doesn't make you right. It just makes you think you're right. And, we know that isn't the case.
Well, they would argue they have special and general revelation to know that God exists to ground all these claims. Anyway, it's a circular argument. I think most of it's actually Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. I don't claim an absolute knowledge like they do over all this stuff. Like, I don't... There's almost nothing I claim sort of absolute knowledge. The only thing I would probably claim that I absolutely know for sure is that something exists, whatever that may be. Just something exists. Just because I have thoughts, something must exist. That's as far as I would go. I wouldn't even go to the cognito ergo sum, or I think therefore I am, because I think that goes a step too further in assuming that I is an independent entity from the rest of the properties of the universe around you. I wouldn't even go that far. But what they don't understand is we don't need absolute certainty to make knowledge claims and to know things, essentially. We make these presuppositions about our senses. It's not unjustified at all. Our senses do suggest that what we are encountering around us is actually there and real. And sort of logic, we can sort of point to the effect and the outcomes that logic gives us as good evidence as to why it is a thing that we should be using. So it's not completely unjustified, but I wouldn't claim absolute knowledge about it. Really, what they're not understanding is that we have confidence levels on things, that we can say, hey, we can be really confident that I exist. We can really confident that Ozian exists because, I can see him. There's all of this evidence for it. They basically want to say either you have absolute 100% knowledge or you don't know it all. It's all up in the air. And I think that that's an equivocation. I think that you can have various levels of knowledge. You can say, hey, I know that my wife goes to Pilates on Wednesday, so it's Wednesday. I know that my wife is, it's not 100% certain. She could have gone out for a coffee instead. She could have, gone shopping. You don't know that for sure, but that's what that's the idea behind a knowledge claim. You have a reasonable amount of certainty, so you believe it, and it's justified, which it is. So if it turns out she's not at Pilates, then I didn't have the knowledge. I was unknowledgeable about that. I was wrong, right? But it doesn't mean you have to have 100% certainty.
No, I try to explain pragmatism in the last show we were on, like the difference between epistemic luck and epistemic pragmatism. And I think science sort of favors pragmatic or pragmatism sort of knowledge. Leo was correcting me. I would call it pragmatic knowledge, but that's more like
science is naturalism. It doesn't investigate things that so empiricism and naturalism are the bedrock of science. It doesn't investigate supernatural claims. It doesn't start with supernatural premises like, I had a dream or I had a vision or something like that. It has to be empirical. Empirical meaning being observed by your senses in some way, either through instrumentation or something else, some phenomenon out there that's observed by senses. So
well, I have a question. Do you believe knowledge is obtainable? Like knowledge is in justified true belief, yes, where you can justify true belief where you can know it's true.
Okay, so so this is the problem with people who are sort of they're sort of knowledge. I'm trying to think of the word, a nihilist kind of thing. They think that you can't ever know for sure kind of thing.
I think skepticism would be like.
Yeah, so I think that when you make a knowledge claim and you say I have knowledge, you can never 100% know that statement is true.
Well, is it possible? That's why I'm asking you. Do you think it's obtainable to know with 100% certainty that anything is true?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I was curious.
Because I think I know with 100% certainty that something exists. Right, that there is a reality. Now, I'm not going to make any statement on what it is, what it entails, what kind of anything at all kind of thing. No statements about it at all, but something must exist.
Yeah,
and I get that through pure deduction.
Right. Well, deduction, yeah, okay. That's presupposing logic. But I understand.
Well, no, not really. It's just saying, well, if like there must be something because I have thoughts. I experience them directly. And the counterfactual is if there was nothing, then I would not have thoughts.
Yeah, well, that's still presupposing logic, but that's fine. I'm not.
I don't think so. What law of logic is it presupposing?
Non-contradiction or. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the entire thing is because thoughts,
identity.
then something.
I'm not saying you're not justified. I believe that I have no doubt that I exist, that the external world exists, and that you exist. I don't have doubts. Like, I don't doubt that logic is useful, math is useful, things like that. Like, it seems weird to like doubt that it can't obtain knowledge based upon these very humble presuppositions. And yes, you're right. I can't justify those presuppositions. But I don't
Well, it
really see that
depends
as a
how we're
problem.
using the word knowledge, kind of thing. In sort of, so in an, like, I think you have to separate knowledge into like an epistemic sense, like what your belief and knowledge is, kind of thing. So how you know what you claim to know, and how, what, you know, that kind of knowledge, and sort of a more absolute knowledge, like an ontological understanding of things, which no one can ever access. No one's got access to that. If that's the way you're using knowledge, as in a ontological certainty, ontology, just for people that haven't encountered before, ontology being the actual state of affairs, the actual metaphysical reality that we're in, nobody has access to that. We've got to filter it through certain things like our senses and our observations and things like that. So I don't think we can ever get to that ontological thing, but that doesn't mean we don't have knowledge. That you have a because knowledge is justified true belief. So you have a belief that's justified if it is in fact in accordance with the ontological reality that is out there. Then yes, you have knowledge, and you have knowledge. If it's not, then you don't have knowledge.
Only if it's justified deductively, because you could have your deduction could be wrong.
No,
where you only know it through luck, and so justified true belief through luck is not actually knowledge.
The
correct. Yeah. But not deductively. You can use induction as well. That can be a
I would say
justification as well.
I would say that's pragmatic knowledge, pragmatism to use induction.
I wouldn't call it pragmatic knowledge. Induction is just sort of, I mean, induction is one of those things where you just see the pattern of occurrences and then induce that the pattern will continue the same. There's not really a problem with that. I think that is a justification. Like if every time the light turns red, the cars stop, and you say, well, I know next time it turns red, the cars will stop. That is knowledge. But you know, you may be wrong on that. Someone might run a red light.
Well, normally we wouldn't call it justified true belief in the philosophical sense that it's knowledge in that sense. We would say, well, I think it's JTP plus, which is under, if you look under the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, under theory of knowledge, they have a section on justified true belief, and then a section on justified true belief plus with Gettier problems, if you're familiar with those. They challenge, sort of challenging your justification. Like, so there's a concept of luck and pragmatism. So if you know it by, like, if you just have to get to the truth through luck, then it's not knowledge because it's not justified. If you accept it as true pragmatically because you have an inductive or abductive argument to justify your claim, then I would say that would be pragmatic knowledge. It'd be JTP plus this other thing to give you justification. So it's like people say, like, okay, this claim in the Quran happens to be true, so that gives me justification to believe all the claims in the Quran based upon epistemic luck. And I don't think epistemic luck is ever a pathway to like a good theory of knowledge, right? I think pragmatism offers much more.
I don't think that. But I think that if you have an inductive system and you happen to be right about that system, like, so if you, like my traffic light, if you have an inductive system that says, hey, next time the lights turn red, they'll all stop. I don't think that's luck in getting you to that knowledge claim being true. I think that is a fully justified and fleshed out reasoning that has got you there. So you're sort of saying, hey, it's luck, in where I say, hey, I think Taylor Swift will do this thing, do a scandal involving heroin or something, right? And that happens to be true, but I haven't based it on anything. Yeah, that's like, I get you. That could just be luck, and that wouldn't be knowledge. But if I say, hey, I have an inductive process that leads me to think this will occur in the future, I think that does count as knowledge. I don't think that's pragmatic implementation, and I don't think it's just luck. I think that it is a rational and reasoned way to come to that conclusion.
Yeah, I think like an analogy would be like all people with red hair. If people have red hair, they're going to die before they're 50. And that's true. They die before they're 50. But you find out the reason why they die before they're 50 is something that causes the red hair also causes them to die before they're 50. So your justification before was false. You just got to the conclusion through luck. But when you found out the true cause for it, now you have more pragmatic knowledge. You can find out if some further downstream cause that actually justifies the claim. I think that's where they say you got to the right conclusions by luck, not through a solid argument. Is like would be more if you read the article. It's a good article. I suggest anybody read the article.
I'll definitely read it.
Theory of Knowledge under the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy or the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Or the Oxford. There's like several of them out there. They all have a unique perspective, but the concepts have a lot of overlap. But I think we derailed Jimmy's whole show.
Totally. That's what I'm here for, quite frankly. No, like I think Tubbs is saying you're going to cut in. Like, it's your show, please.
I know, but you guys are rolling. I think that was a good apertoire for the evening. A little apertoire. Max, you got any questions? Any comments before I dig into my to my nonsense?
No, I think we can just jump into it. I'm excited to hear what you have.
So I'm going to do a little sermon. We're going to call this Jimmy Tux's sermon on whether God is a deceiver, whether he tells the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help God, in his foundational moment of his holy book. This is the foundation. If the foundation doesn't have a good, solid, firm place to build everything else on, the whole thing shall crumble, and mighty shall its fall be, according to Matthew 7. So, look at this. Earl just said this. Isn't this? Oh, yay. Okay. So, my claim is the Bible mentally conditioned you to do to be deceived. Right there at the very beginning. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have a deceiver type of scenario story right at the beginning of a book. We would probably have a good, loving God who teaches us a bunch of things, and this is the way that it instructs you to do God's business, essentially. But instead, we have a story and a claim in which everything is built by God, by the Creator. Now, I want everyone to be aware that this is the Christian belief system. This is not the Jewish belief system. Even though we're going through Genesis 1 through 3, this is the Christian foundation. And I want to do that by displaying this right here. This is Revelations 12:9. This is the New Testament that basically bridges the gap between, and there's a couple other ones, but this is the primary one that bridges the gap between Jesus, Christianity, and the creation story. This is Revelations 12:9.
And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
Okay, Alexander Scorby just told us about, basically, that Satan the devil is the old serpent. So you have to take that reference to use as Genesis 3:1 is the basically the page 3 of this story. And if the deceiver shows up on page 3 of this story, let's imagine that this is a perfect paradise. We're told that Adam and Eve had everything. It's brand new creation. So how can we have deception in their controlled environment? The focus of this is going to be that the mental conditioning for deception to be right there in this story, where it is, that the deceiver of the old serpent, and the God, the deceiver, I'm going to put the blame, instead of on Eve, like most Christians do, that actually the responsibility goes to God, the creator. So, from this holy book, God is the deceiver. Let's use the Bible in Genesis 1, 4, 10, 12, 18, and 21, and 24. There's 6 times God is declaring that what he has done is good. We never hear anything that says, I kind of did something different on this one day. It's always good. So 6 times. And not everything's good if, according to Revelations 12:9, that old serpent called the devil, Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, is existing in this controlled environment, God's controlled environment. That means at least one of those goods isn't true. At least one of those goods. So that's the first, not telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. The second is God follows conclusion in Genesis 1:31. Everything created is very good indeed. And if Satan is in Genesis 3:1, cannot be labeled good, nor very good. So both of those first two, I believe, are telling partial truths or not telling the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help God. God of Genesis 2:8 creates this perfect paradise Eden. Satan's presence in this God-made pleasant place would no longer be no longer be a pleasant place, but be an unpleasant place. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say that the bad guy who's going to be at the end of the story is going to be in this perfect paradise and it be a perfect paradise. So that's number 3. Number 4, not telling the truth. In Genesis 1-4, Satan has a question for Eve, and in the answer, it's compared to the pulpit claims that this is where Satan lies. The problem is, God doesn't tell Eve the rules of Eden. She doesn't exist until Genesis 2:16. So if God tells Adam the rules, tells Adam the rules in 2:16, and Eve's not created until later on in Genesis 2, God hasn't told Eve the rules. Now, I'm not saying she didn't know the rules. I'm just saying that the clarity and the gravitas that comes from the Creator, comes from the God, is absent. And every single apologist and preacher ignores this and makes the assumption it's not in the Bible. Ironically, the first person God fails to explain the rules directly to is easily deceived by the deceiver. A deceiver that shouldn't even exist if God was telling the truth. On the 5th lie, this one's very basic. Well, I said lie, but it's not telling the truth. Eve doesn't die when she touches the fruit. And in the 6th, Eve doesn't die from eating the fruit. In the 7th, Eve, having lived and is now able to trick Adam, he doesn't die either. On the 8th, not telling the truth. Adam is now living and not dead. And this kind of takes on like a half-lie acknowledgement, as being told, don't play in traffic comes with familiar and similar warnings. But an omnipower and the clarity that you would expect, I just think it should be better. And from the pulpit, I was taught that half-lies are no different than full lies. And so I conclude that telling the truth is a moment in which God makes free will obsolete, and to be a slave and manipulated. I have made the case that a deceiver tells the truth more than God kind of makes the 9th lie. If you are going to blame Eve for it instead of take responsibility for it yourself, a God who doesn't correct the record and says, hey, I see how this should have made a little more sense. Instead of you wallowing in this deception for all time and eternity, I'm going to go ahead and take care of it, and I'm going to fix it right now. And that's the problem. Is there was an opportunity there for an ounce of prevention. Doesn't need to murder his son, doesn't need to do any of the things that we have that at the end of the book in Revelations 12:9, deceiveth the whole world, is concluded. To me, the ninth lie is that the entirety of the book is qualifying every single man, woman, and child to be acceptance of deception. That's finally going to get fixed someday towards the end. So, believe full faithfully in something that's untrue. It's probably deception. Just like the creator intended it. Give me an amen.
Amen.
Ramen.
Ramen.
Yeah.
Ramen.
So, I mean, and we know that God can deceive. We know this is true thanks to our Second Thessalonians, I believe. There's a passage in there. Hold on, let me find it. I had it a second ago. Second Thessalonians 2, 8-9, I think. 9-10. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He'll use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie. And all the way the wickedness deceives, they're perishing. They perish because they refuse to love truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that God can deceive if Second Thessalonians is to be believed.
If that applies to the tree of knowledge of good and evil,
Well, I don't think
then,
it does.
yeah, then, I mean, you know, I don't believe this crap. I'm just using the Bible as a literal interpretation to.
Oh, that's fine. I don't disagree with anything you said. I think that sort of God saying, "Hey, don't touch the fruit, or you will die." So the apologetic is that, hey, he meant that humans would die rather than live forever at some point in the future, kind of thing. And I think that that's a very, I don't think it's a very strong objection because he sort of says, touch the fruit and you will die. I think that that's a very immediate way of talking about it rather than some far-flung future point where, you know, you'll die and your descendants will die kind of thing.
Max?
The other apologetic I've heard for this is that this means a spiritual death, but it doesn't really say anything about spirits or flesh or anything. It doesn't even mention like the soul to this point. So
yeah, that's an ad hoc.
It actually talks about ribs and bodies and stuff, but I've heard the same thing. Like they were spirits in the image of God in Eden, actually within heaven, and they were basically cast out of heaven, and they wore skins. But they didn't mean like animal skins. Some people say they put on a body basically when they left heaven. But it is a post hoc rationalization. But they'll appeal to other texts like Book of Enoch, or is that the one? There's a bunch of other apocryphal texts that are not that they'll appeal to.
There's the Slavic story of Adam and Eve. I think is the main one, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I researched it.
Hearing these ideas, I hadn't thought about many of them in this way as kind of either a half truth or a half lie, however you want to see them. I hadn't thought about many of this before, but it kind of makes you think that, or at least it makes me think. And when I go down these paths, I always end up in the same place. Like, okay, this doesn't seem like a book written by God. This seems like a book written by people who were coming upon knowing some new stuff, but they were lacking of knowledge in some other areas.
Yeah.
Like not making contradictions or not realizing that, okay, this statement might be interpreted as God kind of lying in the future.
Yeah, well, look at the general.
Go ahead.
You look at the general story arc. This is creation. This is how humans were created. This is how we pissed off God. This is how we redeemed ourselves. Here's all the rules and laws we must follow, and why we control women, and why we actually have destiny. What do we manifest destiny to rule all the lands, like all the lands they knew of. You look at biblical cosmology of the time, it even makes more sense. That you thought like that was all there was. So it's like,
and you can.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just, to go back to Genesis, I completely agree, and it's also it seems to me to be mythology as to, it even goes into why do snakes bite humans. I mean, we know that is because snakes defend themselves, kind of thing. They're scared of us and want to defend themselves. They're young, et cetera, et cetera. But this sort of tells you it's because the serpent did this. So, God cursed the snakes to strike at people's heels and curse the people to stamp on the snakes, kind of thing. Well, we know that's not a curse. That's just, snakes being snakes.
I thought I'll send Issa the link.
Yeah, I'll post. I'll put a link in here. Oh, you're PMing him
on Discord.
Okay. Anybody else want to come in? Just let me know.
But yeah, it is like a creation story, the mythology, like where they came from. And you see this all throughout, like all cultures have created these myths and moral lessons to try to live your life by. I like the Greeks. I think it was less like prescriptive and more like these are the flaws humans have and how they deal with each other and their interactions. And these are the lessons we can learn. And now, not all the lessons are good lessons. I don't necessarily agree, but I think those are more like how we tell our children how you should behave to other people. Like, don't do what Zeus did over here. Don't do what this god did over here. Like, you see what happened when they did
Aries.
that, huh? Yeah.
Don't be like Aries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, in all reality, what I presuppose now is that this was designed by somebody, or sometimes somebody like a government in Babylonian is my best guess, but Babylonians had enslaved the Hebrew people and wanted them to be happy and productive slaves, and designed a slave system that had something similar to this. And then when they left their captivity, they're like, hey, remember when we had that motivator, being that we all were kind of, you know what, let's adapt that now that we're independent, an independent version of that. And to me, the metaphor is lying within the tree of life, that anybody who falls for this book is actually falling under the influence of the knowledge of good and evil, and that deception is indeed the purpose of this type of enslavement, this newfound type of enslavement. That is my presupposition. That's what I do believe.
It's a bit more on the conspiracy side than I will advocate for. It's a very interesting thought, but it suggests malice, and I don't think there was malice behind this. I think it was just early humans doing as best they could.
I would agree with that.
I do share, for example, more of a view like that on Islam. I do think that Islam is a geopolitical tool of the time more than I think for Christianity. I think that was more like a progression of the Jewish religion.
That's it. You know
with
what?
some other stuff.
We're removing Oz because he has hair. I thought I'd put BS's. I thought I'd put BS's comment up there.
I thought it was a comment out of left field for no reason. It's like, wow, no, okay.
BS. Does anyone feel Oz is out of place? Yes. Look at that. Look at that hairline. Jeez. Jesus tits.
No one gets to keep their hair forever. Let me give you the tip right now.
Well, eventually I'll die and I'll still have hair. The hair will be with my body. Unless they burn me, that's fine too.
It will eventually rot. It'll rot after you die. It'll rot. You don't. It's not forever.
You see mummies that still have hair like thousands, or not thousands. Yeah, thousands of years later.
Yeah, but eventually it will go.
That's funny.
Look, your hair will not survive like the heat death of the universe. All right, so my statement is correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, just give me this one, Oz. Just give me this one.
I'm going to be to the TARDIS and go to another universe. So,
boy.
Okay.
I've never been a big Doctor Who fan, but it has infiltrated my life as a, a little bit of the social aspects, and quoting bow ties are cool, for instance.
I just love David Tennant. That's all there is to it.
I'm looking forward to the new Doctor.
Oh, there's a new one coming out.
Oh yeah. They already did some.
Yeah, Earl, come on in.
You're probably going to hate me more than you already do, but I've never seen Doctor Who ever.
No, that's all right. It's very English, It's
I
very
watched
English
it.
oriented.
I watched something around 1982, maybe.
Look, if
at
you
the
see
public library.
If you see one Doctor Who episode, see the Angels one, the Weeping Angels.
I know about those.
Really good episode.
So
David Tennant's pretty awesome. So what can we say?
I think the new Doctor's going to be pretty good.
Don't blink. Chat, help me out. Don't blink.
Yeah.
I think that's the episode.
There's two of them. I think you got.
Yeah, the first one. Right. I mean the first one. Like when.
And Matt Smith is awesome. David Tennant and Matt Smith are awesome. So.
I'm not. Matt Smith. He's fine. Like, don't get me wrong. Nothing against him. I just prefer David Tennant. I think David Tennant's amazing.
He's still alive.
Sorry.
But
he's still alive. He's still the Doctor.
David
Tennant's still the Doctor.
What do you mean?
You got to watch the Christmas episodes.
Oh.
David Tennant came back as a Doctor.
Did he?
Yeah,
but that was in the past. That was in his past. No. The current timeline. That he stopped being the Doctor when he died and regenerated.
No, he came back.
Oh,
when
really?
What's Her Face died, she became David Tennant.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Look, I haven't watched it for a long time.
And then they didn't do it. They did it by regeneration. So when David Tennant died, they by regenerated and became David Tennant and Nick. I'll share a thing if you care enough about it.
Do you know they made magic cards? They made made Doctor Who magic cards. If you're into magic,
Cootie Gatwa. That's a new Doctor.
Okay.
He's a gay man with the
card? Is that colorless? Issa, you can't say that and not give me information about it.
Oh, which thing? Oh, magic cards?
Are they colorless cards or do they have a color?
Oh, a lot of them are. Oh, I see what you mean. Like they are. A lot of them are commanders. I'll see if I can find my set here. I think I have it here. But basically, a lot of them are mixed colors. Some of them are blue and red.
Blue, green. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Let me see. I'm going to see if I have it. Give me a sec. I'm going to find it.
Hello, Earl.
I like your new tie-dye.
Thank you.
Ta-da!
Yeah, nice. I like his skulls too. That's awesome.
Does the octopus have a bow tie? No. No on your shirt.
No,
Oh.
just a hat.
Top hatters.
Yeah, he's saying indubitably.
Indubitably.
Oh, that's the best doctor, though. I was part of the VFA 14 Top Hatters, oldest and boldest. It's a F-18 squadron. What? You might have transitioned by now. I'm old. What happened?
I don't have a problem with anybody being a doctor. I think variation is one of the things that really mixes it up. I think a good doctor is just a good doctor. It doesn't matter what your attributes are.
I like the fun the fun ones that are like more flamboyant and outspoken. Like I don't know. We'll see. They've only had 3 episodes.
Yeah. I like the ones that are flamboyant but get very kind of, that can portray the amount of rage and sort of emotional depth that the character has. Like, because they basically genocided an entire species and lived through like the most horrible wars and stuff. I like the ones that can tap into the level of torment that would have to put you through kind of thing. I really do like that.
Like the Last Doctor totally destroyed it for me when she found this giant spider that some radioactive thing made him grow too big, and the spider was so big that it couldn't breathe and it was suffocating and dying in tremendous pain, and she didn't want it to be killed or like put out of its misery, like because she was against killing things. I'm like, sometimes like your ideals can get away with what's right, like. Find a way to either cure it, put out of its suffering, or end its life. And she just chose to let it just die in agony and misery. And I was like, what's wrong with this? This is not the Doctor.
Yeah, that's icky.
No, that's fair. That's a fair comment. If I'm suffering that much, I hope somebody puts me out of my misery, quite frankly. If you're suffering that much, and there's no, okay, if you can cure me, please do cure me. Like, don't take that as a, hey, Mark's got a, stubbed his toe, take him out. No, please. If you can cure me, cure me. But, if you're going to live the rest of your life, I really hope somebody, exceeds to my wishes. Contentious maybe, but that's how I feel.
And it was only for moments longer. It wasn't like minutes longer.
That's just
cruel.
Horrible.
The minute I start piddling on myself, I want somebody to take me out in the back of the barn.
I can't remember if the other person there actually killed the spider. I think they may have, but she didn't want to kill it.
I've got 3 that live with me in my apartment.
Like, I don't think any rational person would do that. Like,
no.
Maybe.
Well, maybe a vegan. I don't know. I did say rational, though. Sorry.
That's ableist.
Pretty much.
I guess.
That's it. Cancel Ozian. That's it. Cancel Oz. Again, I think.
Again.
Again.
Yeah. Well, we got some more hair. We got some hair.
Yes.
Earl and he's got plenty of hair, it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, I got plenty of hair.
Yeah. You got plenty of hair.
I got some. I grow my hair out to donate it.
I'll do the T-jump style, right?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, did I do that right?
Over your eyes.
Right. How do I do this?
I don't know. I feel like T-Jump just doesn't listen to the moderator, and that's his style and stuff. If I was the moderator, I'd be a lot more. Like, I don't think I could moderate that because I'd be like, no, you're gonna listen.
Ryan.
You're definitely. I do not put up with that kind of nonsense.
I don't do well with threats. So if you went like, hey, if you mute me again, I will leave. I will just mute you to see if you leave, like right then. It's like I don't deal well with threats like that. Maybe it's South American in me. Maybe it's like the Latin passion, but it's like, don't threaten me because I will.
No, I do it just for spite. I mean,
I
That's
probably
bad.
wouldn't just for spite or to find out, but I certainly wouldn't take it on board. I would have to say, hey, I've got to do my job regardless of what you do what you want to do. I have to do what I have to do.
Right. Under the
Sorry
fuck
if that
around and
offends
find
you.
out doctrine. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. It's just I feel like, and don't get me wrong, I like T-Jump. I've debated with him before. I do like the guy. I just feel like if you're in a debate, you should give a lot of respect to the moderator. It's a hard job to do. It's a very hard job if you've ever moderated, especially if you've moderated a dumpster fire. It is just ridiculously hard. So I think giving a little bit of respect is probably a good idea. He can disagree with me on that. That's fine.
No,
Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
I mean, I was saying, like, if I was Ryan, I just would have been like.
I think the debate was going well. I was like, I understand you wanted to move the topic along, so you got to follow the moderation. That's what we agreed to when you did the debate. But like the back and forth, I don't think was too disruptive, and it looked like Luke honestly wasn't hearing what T-Jump was trying to say sometimes too. And so T-Jump was trying to correct it before he went on this totally different tangent. Like, I understand that. And
I think he wasn't getting what T-Jump was saying, but like you can't just sort of cut him off kind of thing and not hear the guy out. I think the way that debates changed for me is I thought, if because T-Jump doesn't like people saying stuff stupid, and I'm kind of like, well, you're in modern day debate and you're against, a theist. I mean, not to say that all theists say stuff stupid, but some of them will. You will encounter, but you'll encounter atheists that'll say stupid stuff. So I'm not picking on the theists. I'm just saying you're going to encounter people saying stupid stuff. Think of it like an opportunity to sort of make a really good point in the debate. Like it's good for you. So I don't know why he doesn't allow it. Like, give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves.
Yeah.
If they're saying stuff that's stupid, then it's good for you. I don't understand why it's bad.
I have a question. I think I heard, if you mute me, I won't be coming back. And I was left thinking, won't he be coming back to the debate or in general to MDD as a platform? I want to ask.
MDD.
I think he said to MDD.
MDD. Yeah, I would imagine so.
He said that before, though.
Good to see that I wasn't just me.
He's a lot of bluster.
He wants his own show. He's more respectful, I think, on his own show too. But he's getting super.
I think he is, yeah.
But he restreams like the content, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I think he's a lot calmer when he's in charge, and not to say that he like abuses power or anything like that, but I think he is calmer. Like, I think he just deals a lot better with nonsense when he can sort of be in charge. But there's a lot of people that won't go on a debate if you're the one in the debate and also the moderator kind of thing. A lot of people go, well, I don't want to do that. And I can understand why. It's kind of, you want somebody neutral there. But if you agree to go on a neutral platform to debate, it's like going into a ball game and going, well, I agree to participate in this ball game, but I'm not going to listen to the ref. You can't do that. The ref might make terrible decisions, and you've just got to say, hey, I disagree with your decision, but I'm going to abide by it because that's the game kind of thing. That's what I've agreed to do. So,
There's one time I told Ryan, nope, I'm going to answer this question. Nope, I'm not moving on yet. And that was when that stinking racist Dustin's Nemos,
yeah.
He asked me if I was Jewish, like it was like an insult. I said, "No, what did you just ask me?" Oh yeah, I'm Jewish. Yeah, you have a problem with that?
What, bro?
Chef kiss. That was great.
What I think,
I think that was more. He was trying to like stop the channel from being demonetized due to anti-Jewish sentiment being broadcast.
I think what's strange. What's so bizarre to me about that is I'm like, dude, your religion, Christianity, is completely predicated on Judaism. It's the same thing with Islam. I'm like, when Daniel attacks Islam, I'm like, attacks Judaism. I'm like, dude, you're attacking Islam. When Christians attack Judaism, you attack Christianity. Like, you don't have Christianity without Judaism. What do you think Jesus is? Do you think he was some European Roman guy? He's a Jew. The whole point is they have a whole genealogy saying that he's supposed to be a descendant of King David. They're trying to prove this messianic lineage of Judaism.
Okay. Yeah, so the way that the major apologetic I've heard on that one is that the Jewish sort of interpretation of the Torah and the Old Testament by default is kind of a corruption, an offshoot that's a corruption, and God always intended the New Testament to be the real one, basically, you know, the good one. So I don't know. I agree with you, Issa.
But the whole premise of the New Testament is that it's Jewish. Like, this is why I was mentioning this with Matt Dillahunty. I'm like, bro, who wrote the New Testament? It's Jewish people. It's a Jewish book about Jewish people. I mean, yes, it says non-Jews are now can be a part of the community, but all the things. Why are you quoting Isaiah? Why are you quoting Jeremiah? Why are you quoting all of these Jewish prophets? Because you're making a point. Because Jesus is the Jewish king. He's the Jewish Messiah. So I'm like, it's so weird when I hear these folks say, oh, I hate Jews and I hate Judaism. I'm like, then just discard the New Testament. Discard the entire corpus, because you can't sustain believing in Christianity if you reject Judaism. You just can't do it.
I agree with you. I'm just telling you what the major apologetic is, that the Jewish interpretation has been corrupted, and that the one under Jesus is the correct one, and that's usually what I hear.
And I totally hear that. I'm just saying, I'm like, even if that's the case, I'm like, Jesus is a Jew. Even Paul of Tarsus is a Jew. All of the apostles are Jews. They're Jews who believe in Jesus, but they're Jews. They're not like non-Jews. And I'm like, this is such a bizarre argument. And I'm like, and I hate to say this, I think particularly for European culture in general, a lot of Europeans have lost their culture because of the advent of Christianity. Christianity took away European culture, and it's hard because it's like, who are your heroes? Your heroes are Jewish people, and then you're like, well, they're not really Jews, they're actually Europeans, and I'm like, that's sad, man.
I don't agree with that.
I don't know about which, like, because European culture isn't really a thing. It's more that there are Germanic cultures and French cultures and Italian cultures, kind of thing, Greek cultures. There's all kinds of cultures.
I totally understand that. Let me clarify what I mean. What I'm saying is, you have this religious milieu, you have this religious narrative. What are most of these cultures in Europe? What do they follow? Well, they follow some variant of Christianity, which is it's an offshoot of Judaism. And some might even argue it's a form of Judaism. So the thing that it's hard for me where I'm saying this, I'm like, the heroes of a lot of these cultures are Jewish people. It's a very bizarre thing that I've seen. I'm like, well, where are the European heroes? Well, they're not really relevant. You know, like Beowulf, the point of why Beowulf becomes relevant is because he becomes Christian. All of these, if you go, like, I went to Ireland and I was like, oh my gosh, I was reading the Irish literature and I'm like, wow, because they started to believe in Jesus, they became to have relevance. Like all of these protagonists and characters, or it's just folklore. You know what I mean? It's very bizarre. It was a very bizarre thing that I noticed when going into the deep dive of looking into this.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I would say like the major influence for a long time was the Roman Empire, right? Mostly controlling. If you look at the history of like just written languages, there was only one major written languages in that region for hundreds of years. It was Latin. And then all of a sudden the Roman Empire collapsed, became, I would say, a theocracy, even though Catholics hate it when I say that, whatever. And then all these other written languages blossomed. All these other diverse cultures blossomed. Yes, I would grant that they also adopted Christianity when it became the mandated religion of the Roman Empire. And like, what was it? 430? Well, it wasn't Constantinople. He made it the state religion, but it was a guy like 100 years later that said no other. He outlawed all other religions. So Constantine made it the state.
Yeah, but he was the start of it. Yeah, but he was the start of it. I think he had plans to outlaw it from the very start. To be honest with you,
well, he did
other religions.
Yeah, he didn't.
Well, he
though.
didn't, but I think that's what he was trying to head
Okay.
towards.
Well,
I think-
so you got the influence. Sorry, I'll let Tux talk.
Well, I also think it's quite a coincidence that Pontius Pilate didn't bring it before Rome. I just crucified this guy, and he's back 3 days later. My soldiers just told me so.
Yeah,
It could be wrong. I could be wrong, but there's like a disconnect of about 300-ish years.
that would
It's
seem
actually
like a
really
major
bizarre
advantage.
historically. It's bizarre historically speaking because we know about the Roman Empire, and the whole story of Pontius Pilate I find very dubious. The story is that it says that they take the Yom Kippur or the Day of Atonement story, where you have the Jesus of Barabbas and Jesus Christ functions as the Lamb of God, and Jesus Barabbas functions as the goat. So in the story of Yom Kippur, basically the sin gets put on the goat, and the goat runs away, and then the lamb is sacrificed. So this is fitting the metaphor and the allegory of the narrative and the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the issue is Romans did not listen to the people they conquered. We have no evidence of that. So there's this claim that Pontius Pilate, who was pretty much a wicked, horrible person according to what we know in history, he was a very barbaric person, is saying that you can free one of these people. I'm like, when have the Romans ever done that? We know at Masada, if you go to Israel and you go to the Masada, they said, we're going to destroy this Israel rebellion. We're going to destroy these Jews. The 1,000 people, they built the bridge over, and they said, we're going to, if they don't surrender, we're going to kill them. And they did a mass suicide. So I'm like, the Romans were not these kind, genteel folks that said, oh, we're going to liberate people. So it's a very bizarre thing to see in the story because we know that this narrative never existed historically speaking. It's a spiritual story, but not historical.
Yeah, but also the Bible was written in the times where the Romans were very much in charge. And if they had sort of not sort of displayed the Romans as pretty benevolent, would it even have been allowed in sort of Roman colonies and civilization kind of thing? I would say not. I think that it's written like that because it had to be. Like, you have to write it like that, or else the Romans are going to get very upset about it.
Yeah, you're not going to live very long to tell the tale.
That's totally fair. I just think it's bizarre where people are like, this is history. Like, Tux was talking about this before. They're like, oh, the history is here. And I'm like, history of what? Like, I mean, it's dubious at best if we're going to try to look at it like at literal history. Like, it just doesn't work that way. Because, like, first and foremost, the New Testament gives us this point of trying to showcase genealogies to us. Well, what's Paul's genealogy? Where does he come from outside of the New Testament? We don't know. I think I was considering writing a PhD. Did Paul of Tarsus actually exist? We have absolutely no idea if he did. We don't know if he's a complete construction or not, because he claims a lot of things. He claims he's a student of a great rabbi named Gamaliel. Did he? We have no idea. We have no idea if that claim is true. No idea about most of the claims that are attached to him. He's a citizen of Rome.
And we know
the Romans don't
he did not write some of the epistles that have been attributed to him. We know that.
We don't know. It's like, that's the correct point. We have no idea about this dude. It's very dubious at best. And it's so funny because people are like, well, is Jesus a myth? I said, is Paul a myth? I think that's a very good question to ask because the only source we have on him is the New Testament. And yes, there's like maybe some Jewish source that's like 1,000 years later, but I'm like, or, a great time year later, but it's, in my understanding, it's like a reflection of engaging because people are mentioning that this guy Paul existed. We have absolutely no idea though. Yeah. We don't. What's his bloodline? What's his genealogy? That's a big thing for Jews, Arabs, Semites. We care about that.
I don't think it's been a successful argument, but there is a element of, I've seen evidence or I've seen the argument made that some of Paul's letters were actually written somewhere around 70 BCE, rather than in the 50s and 60s of 80.
Before Jesus?
Before Jesus.
7 that are
that because even though these letters are written in a way where we read them where it was like one long letter, these are actually letters that have gone back and forth. And there is believed that some of these letters could have been written long before Jesus. Yes. It's evidence. I wouldn't say it's great evidence. It's no better evidence than my enslavement turned religion, conspiracy theory, as Max put it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend. It was just what
it was not.
Came to mind.
It was not an offense. It was not an offense. It is. It is an out there. It is out there. I just think that there is, whether or not it's malevolent, there is an attribute that propaganda is going on full force in Genesis 1 through 11, in my opinion. And that ties into why I believe that you no longer get to live if you follow this thought process. But you gain all this old-time philosophy that there wasn't an education institution to teach it to you in that time comparative to now.
I think Thomas Jackson's question there is pertinent. Like, I think most scholars would say Jesus existed, but there is an argument to make for mysticism. It's based on Bayesian logic, but I don't even think Carrier is that convinced it's a good argument.
I would probably say that's true. I think. Oh, somebody else is here. Oh no.
And
I see what happened.
And there's this guy that was going around that was trying to show that Flavius actually created the stories and stuff like that. And
I think the Luke argument that Luke used some of Josephus is, I think that's a fairly decent argument. And there was another thing that I think it was in Matthew that he may have used a small amount as well. There's something else I want to say. I forget what we were talking about before. This is gone. I wanted to show this. I wanted to show this clip right here, and this comment right here. Jesus basically came and said the Pentateuch is done and over with. So I have queued up.
That's one interpretation of it.
Yes, that is one interpretation of it, but I want to refer to Sam Harris here.
Still anchored to a belief in revelation. They're still fixated on the texts, but they have ignored much of what seems untenable in the texts, and they don't have an argument about why that's okay. Because if God wrote any of these books, and nowhere in the book does God say, well, you could ignore the first half because now I'm getting to the good part. It's all God's word. So it's actually a less principled position than fundamentalism.
There you go. Tell me more. Thank you for that comment.
Well, Sam Harris, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Sam Harris. He isn't a theologian and he isn't a biblical scholar. He's a neurologist. And he's got some amazing things to say. But I think that when it comes to that, I don't know. It's very hard because it does say that not one jot or tittle will be changed until everything has come to pass of the law. And it said, well, Jesus said, well, I'm not here to change the law. I'm here to fulfill it. And then they say, well, fulfill means to, basically say that it's done. And it's like, there's so much interpretation that can be made of that. So much interpretation. And you also have to take into the account that the interpretation that is in the New Testament that sort of in I think it's Peter, he says that he doesn't have to, do the law anymore about wearing what he wears and what he eats kind of thing. So I think there's a whole lot, it is so up in the air what he meant by that. I think it's sort of suspicious. I think that sort of saying that you haven't come to change the law means that the laws should stay the same. But there's argument about that. So I think that one is really up in the air. Don't shoot me.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, this situation, because what we're looking at is different kinds of Jewish peoples. And that's the thing. If you read the New Testament through a Jewish lens, it becomes a very different kind of text. than when you're reading it through, let's say, a British lens. You know, like the New Testament's, the British translation, like a King James translation. It becomes a completely different text because you understand who the Pharisees are. You understand who the Sadducees are. They're not just people who don't believe in heaven. They're like a really fully fledged group of people that have their own dreams, their own ideals, the ways that they operate. And it's a very different space than when you're reading it like this other kind of thing. Because I've been with like in a Bible study and people are like, oh, you know, it's yeah, these are people who just don't believe in afterlife. And I'm like, no, they're a lot more complex than that. And there's a lot of limitations on it, I think.
They're actually a Jewish subculture. They're their own series of beliefs and things. They're not just
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the point. I'm like, and that's the thing. I'm very big into multiculturalism and culture and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to honor cultures from where they're coming from. And I love Howard Zinn's like people's history because he looks at history through their own eyes. He looks at indigenous people through their own eyes. And I think it's super important that we're looking at Jewish texts. How do these Jewish people from this time live? How do they operate? How do they think? Instead of like doing this retcon where we're like, hey, I'm going to use my own modern sensibility and try to read the text this way. And I think it hurts the text, personally.
You should you should email James tonight and challenge Steve McRae to a debate on DEI.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a wonderful debate.
I'm very big into DEI. I think DEI is super important. It's something that's very useful. I think that there's overcorrections and misappropriations of it, but that's with everything. You know what I mean?
I would think it'd be wonderful to see like a Muslim argue for DEI versus Steve McRae. It would just be wonderful to see. You should do that. Just anyways. You guys went at it a little bit.
Certainly mix up the usual, atheist, secular humanist arguing DEI, that would certainly mix it up. Yeah.
What is DEI? I'm sorry.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Because they think it's like a prescription, like or something like that. It's prescribed. You must do all these certain things to make it worse for certain classes of people. And anyways, it's not what it's really intended to be. It's supposed to be whatever like brings about the best outcomes, anyways, isn't it? Like if this type of workforce or society brings about the best outcomes, that's the one we should pursue. Like, and you can study it and learn from it. So they'll see like one example like they did in that. I don't want to talk about it because I think these type of topics get the videos demonetized. But like they were like
I'm not monetized.
Oh, okay, then it doesn't matter. They were talking about like trans issues. Well, there's 600 young girls that got double mastectomies, and that in a year, is that bad? Well, some of them regret it. How many? Well, I don't know. It's a lot of them. You don't know. You have no clue. But there's 2,000 lawsuits in the UK. Like now we're talking about the UK.
Did you say over here? Did you say young girls got vasectomies? Did you say that?
Mastectomies.
Mastectomies.
They're breast removed under 18.
Okay, got you.
Yeah, so I'm like, it's 600 girls. It's like, well, you're just saying there's just a statistic. If it improved their outcomes, like, I don't know. I'm not their doctor or their therapist or the parents or the person that's doing the thing. If 10% regretted it and wish they had them back, they're not getting them back. They can wear like what do you call it? Like prosthetics or something. It's harder to do implants for that than it is.
Yeah, but they still probably can do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm like, but they don't have any numbers. They're just pointing to all these anecdotes. Oh, there's this school in the UK where 60 to 80 of the kids out of 450 said they were something other than cis. I'm like, how? So it's like 15%. I'm like, how do we know that's not the natural rate because of oppression throughout history? How do we know it? Then they'll blame the teachers. You can't talk. You don't have any evidence it's the teachers convincing people to be other than they are. Maybe they're explaining it wrong. Maybe they're explaining it right and people are like exploring. Or maybe it's a social meme where people are just experiencing it as some social thing that people are talking about. It's not the school or the teacher. It's a community. They're exploring. And then even if it is 15%, why is it bad? No answers. But in Texas, teachers are teaching creationism. I'm like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything we were just talking about? This was Steve McRae. Like, dude, you're whatever.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overcorrection.
Well, that's fine.
I think.
How do you know that? How do you know there's overcorrection? How do you know we're just not still coming back to normal? How do you know oppression hasn't squashed the numbers now and a more acceptance? There's not universal acceptance for being LGBT in the United States, right? There's definitely not universal acceptance. So you're saying it's an overcorrection? How can you know when there's not universal acceptance?
It's overcorrection in certain spaces. This is why he's upset. See, I can empathize.
How do you know? How do you know?
Because I'm in these spaces. I'm in the university spaces. I've been in university forever,
and they do have this normal. How do you know it's not the normal?
The problem is because there's silencing of other opinions and voices that exist. It is problematic, and
that's another issue.
And that's the issue that people are having the problem with. But your point is taken, and it's fair. Because there is the thing is, even though in these spaces, like where we look in like Hollywood and we look at film and stuff like that, we see these certain kinds of depictions that of elites. They're Hollywood elites. They're not really talking about the common person. And you're correct. The struggle of the common person is real. It is there. Trans issues are real. You know, like with the J.K. Rowling situation, it's sad because people are getting angry at her, and I'm like, that's not the problem of what the issue is. It's not her that's the issue. The issue is that there's a lot of intolerant people that abuse people, and you need to engage that, not like a famous writer of fiction, you know? I have to disagree. Her voice is a prominent one, and she is denying their identity. Like whether or not, like whatever her motivations for that is, it still affects people very greatly. Like it still does affect them a lot. So I do have to disagree with that. She's a public figure. She's got a lot of people that pay attention to her. If she comes out and says, hey, you are not what you claim to be, that is a very, very dismissing thing because of the scope and reach of her voice. So I totally disagree. It is a problem.
So now you got people out there saying that Barbara Bush was a man. They're saying that Michelle Fox, I think her name is, and the actress is a man because they believe all these.
Michelle Obama is forever.
Oh, Michelle Obama is a man because they're convinced in this friggin' If anything, you could argue there's a social correction that's responding to it in a negligent action. They're being super reactionary to people just being who they are. If no one worried about who people identified as long as they're not harming other people, I don't think, maybe we'll finally find out what the national rate of gay people are, lesbian people are, trans people are, because right now we do not know, because all of these are about people's personal preferences in the case of sexuality, and whether it's a choice or biological or their nature, their nurturing or whatever, it doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong with the people having that sexuality. Whether trans is a choice, which I deny, or biological and psychological, which I tend to believe it's so, it doesn't take away from the fact, even if it's either or, who cares if somebody decides they want to express themselves as a woman?
We don't know for sure, but the research that I've seen suggests there is at least a large neurological component to it, that your brain has to be sort of hardwired, if you will. I hate using that term, but hardwired in a certain way for this to even happen. So, I'm not going to go digging through papers, but that's essentially what I've read. But we don't know for sure. I'm not
reject the papers.
So I wanted to engage what you.
But they reject the papers. But let's go with this. There are still people today that are afraid to come out as gay to their family. There's still people afraid today to come out as lesbian. There's still people today afraid to come out as trans. So if you got a bunch of children who are like fine, I'm gay, when they're really not, but they're trying to create like a social acceptance. It's like when we started reframing what atheism meant in the 90s to try to take away the social stigma of identifying as atheist, as instead of taking this, you just disbelieve in a God, which is sort of like, you're just denying what's real, dude. And to try to turn it toward like it's a lack of belief, opening the umbrella, which, like, I'm totally fine with that. It's destigmatizing it, the thing. So even if a person only lacks a belief or they believe God doesn't exist, they're destigmatizing the term. So some person, some kid, you have a friend it's like the person who shaves their head bald because their daughter is going into chemo and she's going to lose all her hair. So right? So if somebody like says, "Oh, I'm trans, I'm going to stand beside you," when they're really not, because their kids like just role playing. Like, I don't have a problem with that. So we don't know. We just don't know.
So I wanted to engage one thing quick about Mark, what you had said. You were saying that going back about J.K. Rowling, I don't think that celebrities and famous people need to be saints. I take a pretty actually libertarian position. I think people are entitled to their opinions, and I'm going to tell you something that kind of makes me a little bit upset. All these holy rollers that come out and say, "I'm going to call you out and tell you about how immoral you are," and I'm like, "Excuse me, are you moral? Are
immoral, you mean?
Yeah, sure, immoral. Yeah, are you on the ethical? Are you on the ethical wavelength of ethical purity? It's like this purism test, and I'm like, why are we? This person has an opinion. She has her opinion about biological women. That's her opinion. But what happened was when these people came and they said, "Hey, how?" Because originally, what I was researching this, her position was she had supported this journalist, and the journalist was saying that trans women and biological or cis women are different, but it wasn't actually hostile towards trans women, the original article. So she basically platformed that position. So people got extremely offended. And my understanding is that JK then became extremely reactionary to that position, and it created this huge warfare. And I'm like, look, it's like, I totally think, I agree. Like, I am with you, Mark, that I think we should be ethical. I'm going to try to be ethical, but I'm not going to hold people to my standard. And I don't really care if famous people hold some ethical standard, because that's not what famous people's goal are. I don't see them as my moral standard of truth and justice, and I think that's the problem. We do an idolatry. We worship celebrities, we worship writers, we worship all of these different types of people and expect them to be the paragons of truth and justice. And I'm like, but they're not. They're a good fiction writer. That's it.
Isa, I'm going to have to stop you there, mate, because I don't worship any of these people. It's pragmatic, because as much as I would like it that nobody had the reach these people have. That nobody sort of have the influence that they do have. But while they do, and they can be held accountable, I think that we do need to hold them accountable for what they say, because they have power. Like, I'm gonna quote Spider-Man, which is terrible, but with great power comes great responsibility, and how to use that power. And I think there is a truth there. Like, you can't just be given the power to sort of reach all of these people and use it unwisely or unethically. So, how would we feel if somebody was racist, for instance, and had the level of power that J.K. Rowling had? What if somebody was...
Marjorie Taylor Greene does. She believes in Jewish space lasers.
Sure.
She has no,
and I think
no real accountability for anything that she said. So
yes, and I think that's wrong. That's the thing. Like, that's whataboutism, Isa, and you know it. That's sort of saying, well, what about Nigel? Yeah, I don't agree with her either, and think that she shouldn't be allowed to say the things she is as well. Like, so I'm all for free speech, but when you're verging on hate speech, when you're verging on saying, hey, these people aren't real, whatever, they're not really this, they're not really that, and you're basically doing harm to others by the amount of power and reach that you have, then yeah, I don't have a problem with people cancelling J.K. Rowling. She did not support an issue that needs to be supported. I think that she sort of deserves everything she gets, quite frankly.
But why? Like we see, I'm on this issue. I
because
ethically
we
agree
don't
with
tolerate
you.
bigotry. We don't tolerate bigotry.
But there's all kinds of bigotry that we do tolerate. It's
Like-
hard for me to fathom. Like, for example, we could say, you know, we tolerate the slaughter of animals and we consume animals. We could say that that's a bigotry to animals. We tolerate it. We accept it. We commercialize it. We commercialize it.
We don't use bigotry to mean us, you know, doing things to animals. Like that isn't.
We say we're higher than the animals and we're allowed to do whatever we want to these animals. That is bigotry. We are saying we are a superior species. We are saying we are a superior species to animals. Thus, we are allowed.
This is a red herring. I mean, we're talking about humans here. Yeah. Like, why are we going down?
Yeah, why is that a red herring?
Animal path? Give us an example with humans.
If interspecies prejudice is bigotry, that means that when a shark eats me, it's bigotry. That's the level of ridiculousness we're getting into here.
I don't think so, because I'm talking about
because I'm human and not a shark. Like that's the level of ridiculousness.
I'm a speciesist.
So I'm talking about what humans are doing to animals. I'm not. See, first of all, I can't.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Go into the space.
Yeah,
we were talking about trans.
We
were talking about trans bigotry. Like you're correlating being bigoted towards trans people to eating meat and slaughtering animals?
That's a straw man. That's not my argument. My argument that I'm making is that I'm trying to say that Mark asked, he said, what kinds of bigotry exists? I said, this is a type of bigotry that exists. I didn't say that it's a human bigotry that exists. It's a form of bigotry that exists of what humans can do to other animals. So that I do think it's
not, because bigotry is the treatment of humans towards another, like based upon their race, culture, religion, you know, all of these things. There's a series of criteria for bigotry.
I mean, that's how you're defining it.
Species is not one of them. Okay, that's not bigotry, because bigotry is judging a person. Like, so you would have to make the case that, you know, animals are people and deserve such treatment under the law.
Under your definition. That's not how I defined it. Clearly, I didn't define it the way that you defined it. That was your definition. I'm saying.
So I don't know what you're talking about when you're saying bigotry.
Bigotry is a discrimination against another being. So I'm including animals, humans, whatever. I'm not saying bigotry to me is not just humans. So that's
you're bigoted towards vegetables then.
I mean, I think that you're.
It's an absurd argument. Like we were talking about. Can you give us an example of how everybody's bigoted towards other humans? I think we're getting into absurd.
Absolutely, we're getting into absurdity.
1 second before you continue. I need to go because it's almost 4 a.m. here. Jimmy, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to everyone
Max.
else.
Oh, thanks, Max.
I'll take care and I'll be seeing you around.
We're not the nicest we could possibly be to animals. Does everybody agree?
I acknowledge that. Yeah,
I agree.
I would like to see more humane treatment of animals.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would change my stance on animals if I thought an evolution process could start where we could communicate across the table, much like we are right now in this room.
I think
I don't think that would happen.
I tend to think like maybe the great apes are people. I don't know. Like some toothed whales are people, like dolphins and porpoises. Maybe they're people. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know, we could come up with technologies too that change that dynamic of sitting around a table or conversing much in a room like this as well. So
they're learning to talk to whales.
Yeah,
like we are. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, but I would rather hear a sort of example of bigotry where humans are being bigoted to one another, kind of.
That's
thing.
fine.
So
classism. How we treat the unhoused. That's a perfect example.
Yeah, I got a big problem with that. Yes,
I got a big problem. I do a lot of work. I do a lot of work helping the unhoused, and it's a horrendous situation where we ignore people. We don't help people with mental health issues. It's a very difficult situation.
So do you think if J.K. Rowling stood up and said, hey, you know, the unhoused don't deserve to be, you know, they're not really bad off, they don't deserve to be helped kind of thing, do you have a problem with that?
I personally do. See, like I said, ethically, I'm with you. I just have an issue of saying I'm going to deplatform. My issue is not about the ethics. We actually agree on the ethics on this. because I take a leftist approach myself on a lot of these things, where I'm like, look, I'm actually doing a social work program right now, so this is something that's very important for me. But I definitely think we need to care about trans people. I definitely think we need to care about the rights of folks. But my issue is like, I don't really care about if these because I'm like, most politicians do the same thing. They say they deserved it. I hear so many politicians say, you know what, those unhoused people, they deserve it, and they're not deplatformed. They're fine. They're like, yeah, those politicians are right. We don't need to actually allocate resources to helping these people. You know what I mean? So that's
but
that's my feeling.
If you could deplatform the politicians by electing them out or whatever, would you?
I probably would. Yeah. I mean, personally, I would do that. But
those politicians, they're really relying on sort of a political mandate from people in order to have their platform. And unfortunately, the people are supporting them, even though they do say these terrible things. And you're right, they do. Absolutely. I'm not disagreeing with you on that at all. But the whole thing is that J.K. Rowling is she's a writer and an author and a spokesperson, so she kind of is in a different situation where she can be deplatformed by people just doing it on their own, especially her audience, which largely is pretty progressive. Yeah. So that progressive audience may not be able to do something about some Republican senator in Texas or something, but they sure as shit cannot buy a Harry Potter book. So really, we're really talking, that's where I get back to the pragmatics of it all. Really, we're talking about what can we do rather than if we can't stop this person, we should stop nobody. And I think that's where you're going wrong. You're sort of saying, hey, but all of these other people say awful things and we don't do anything about them. But it's more all of these other people say awful things and we can't do anything about them. We would love to be able to, but we can't. So really, it does come down to who can we do something about and what is that something we can do? And that's a good conversation to have. But sort of saying other people get away with it, I'm really sorry, Isa, that's just whataboutism.
Well, there's a reason why I'm going there. I'm saying what I find, and this is my personal opinion, it's hypocrisy. It's not really whataboutism. I don't think these people are holding these people's feet to the fire. They don't make the same noise. See, the thing is, you're right. Maybe they don't have power to de-elect them. They don't actually have any real power to stop J.K. Rowling. She's a millionaire, or is she a billionaire now? Whatever they say, so. She's super wealthy. They're not going to stop her. She's still going to keep making money. All they're doing is just making a fuss. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But they don't make a fuss about these people. It's the same thing where I see a lot of people that get so mad about certain countries doing certain things, but they will not hold the same standard. What I'm saying is I'm talking about accountability. And I feel it's not a whataboutism, because I'm like, look, these people get so mad about this one thing, but they will not get mad about these other things. Maybe they're ignorant. That's possible. Maybe they don't know these things. But my issue is I'm like, if you are so sincere about being an advocate and a warrior for justice, then why aren't you doing this advocacy in these other places? I don't see people going out and saying, yo, look at these politicians, man. If they did the same kind of noise and they wrote op-eds and said all this stuff, because these people actually have power. Politicians have power. J.K. Rowling, she's a writer. She writes books. She writes stories. She has political power.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I do. But there are people speaking up, like Marjorie Green or whatever. Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's criticized a lot, right? Like I see a lot of influencers, media, a lot of different things saying how horrible she is for the things that she says on a regular basis. Like it's absolutely astounding she has any power at all, in my opinion. But what my thing wasn't about the power, it was about the reach. And I would put it to you that J.K. Rowling at her height had way more reach than any politician you'd care to name. I think she had more reach than the British Prime Minister. I think she had more reach than the president, especially to young people. So we've got to look at this in the right context that, oh, yes, these people have power over things like financial policy, social policy, all of these policies. But if you have a person with a reach of the size, like the ability to get to an audience the size of J.K. Rowling, and the way the audience looked to her as sort of and like you said, idolized her, I think that is the big problem, that when she starts to say things that are problematic, it's like, well, yeah, a politician might say that, but they don't have the reach that she does. She can, in like sort of, an entire countries around the world will hear her, and a lot of those people are young people who look up to her, and that's the problem. It's the reach, not the power. So I want to differentiate those two things.
Well, let's try and move on to a different subject. Somebody mentioned that we thought we were talking about Christianity around here instead of this. So I was like, well, let's talk about Christianity. Let's finish, and then I'll do a moment of Zen. Let's finish with each person's intuition after reading the Bible.
I just want to say to Isa, like, I agree with you over terrible people being in power. I agree with all of that, like, totally. And I do see your point. Like, I do see your point. But I hope we can argue about this and still respect one another and stuff, because I do. And I do respect your points. I really do.
Thank you. We'll talk about it later. I know we're on a different platform here, but I have
yeah.
I have a framework to engage this point later on when we have another conversation. We'll engage.
Okay, sure.
Oz, are you leaving?
No.
Or are you waving to somebody else?
You made me big.
I'm going to make you big.
I'm waving at myself.
I'm going to get the Earl. I was going to do Earl first, but she might not be on. So
I'm still here.
You're here. I was going to ask everybody what their if they believe that Christianity is a human construction, and what their best reference point biblically is to that human-made construction.
Me first, or
as you don't have to go first. You know, I can
go first.
I'm first.
Go for it.
Okay. So I don't use the Bible to justify claims in the Bible. I'm a atheistic naturalist. So, like, I believe the Bible is a human construction because all religions are human constructions. They're created within the minds of humans to try to understand the world, provide reasons to enforce laws and rules and stuff like that, and culture and community and ethical frameworks for those things. So that's my, like, the Bible to me, like, has a lot of internal contradictions. But I've never believed it was true. And I would say that's why I believe it's human construction. Nothing to do with the Bible itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, Earl, what are you thinking?
I think religion in general is a tool used to control people. I think that the concepts, I think that the Bible in particular, I don't know about how Christianity, like, whether Christianity started has that same motivation, but certainly the Bible as it was created did that. They create this hell concept, and it's meant to subjugate the masses, and give people a reason to hate other people. Like, it's just it's a built-in excuse. Like, here you go. But in terms of Christianity's origins, I think that it was a lot of stories, and then because of the way that humans are going to human, things became untruths that people honestly believed. I don't think that it was a bunch of lies. I think that it was a bunch of people that honestly thought this was true and wrote it down, but it's still not true. But that they honestly believed it.
Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah. They're just honestly mistaken.
All right. Bald men unite. Mark, you got a moment of
oh yeah, sure.
Clarity on
Yeah. So is the Bible a construct? I think in a way it is. I think there's some things in there that probably did reflect accurately sort of the way that people lived and the culture that they lived in and what they believed to be true. But I really push back against this idea that it is a history book, like it describes history. It's not. It's more it's more useful as a cultural insight into the people that lived during that time. There's a few reasons to sort of understand why this is, especially the formation of the Yahweh figure from older Canaanite religions. There used to be a pantheon, which Yahweh was just the son of El, the chief god, and there was his brother Baal and Asherah, the consort of El, and just a whole bunch of these gods. And understanding how Yahweh became the central fixture for this one Israelite religion is sort of a key to understanding how this book was constructed to sort of say, hey, it's the only God and my God is the greatest kind of thing. There's also a lot of other contextual clues from history, like the fact that the Canaanite pottery and arts didn't have any Egyptian influence on it, and the Egyptians didn't have any Canaanite influence on it. That the Egyptians did not enslave the Israelites for the time they claimed, and that the history of architecture and art and pottery and all of these things, we know that the Canaanites instead referenced older Canaanite cultures, or the Israelites rather referenced older Canaanite cultures. We can kind of understand that this book is sort of talking in metaphors and talking in certain ways that perhaps the Canaanites were vassals underneath the Egyptians, not their slaves. So it isn't describing actual history. It's describing a people's interpretation of how they felt and how they experienced life and what sort of things were important to them. So this question of and the title is Can God Lie? It's sort of shown that God is kind of deceptive all the way, not all the way through, but at certain points in the Bible. So I think he can be deceptive. Did he lie in Genesis? He appears to on a surface reading of it. There's a lot of apologetics around that he didn't. But that's why I think that the Bible is a social construct, or it's more a cultural construct of the people at the time, sort of something that is their cultural mind. A lot of the stuff like Psalms, for instance, a lot of it, the laments are things like, well, we cry for the fall of Israel and the first temple kind of thing. A lot of it is these kind of wishful thinkings rather than prophecies. They're kind of, we will one day go back and this will happen and you know, we will take these actions. So I really think it is it's an important book to understand the cultures of the near Middle East, but the actual religion isn't really historical at all, and it is just a social construct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good.
Sorry, I was a little wordy. But you knew that had happened when you got me on there.
That's right. Who wants a wallflower?
All right, I guess it's my go.
It's your go.
All right. So it's funny, Mark and I actually pretty much agree 100% on this. I think that Mark and I actually agreed on a lot of things. It's just we had a different kind of political thing on that thing, which is the funny issue on that. But I think that the way that we look at these texts, it's a spiritual narrative. It's not meant to be historical. It's not meant to be taken that way. But the problem is modern day people want to be taken that way because it gives them power. It empowers them to do so. There's a good chance if we look at the ancient Israelites, you know, henotheism was a practice that probably was there. Henotheism means that there was multiple deities, but El was the highest god that needed to be followed. And this kind of form, like once we get towards the axial age, we get to this place of radical monotheism. But I definitely think that there's an evolutionary process that exists. We can see a lot of Babylonian tradition that's there. Like we see a lot of the imagery on the Ark of the Covenant, like the cherubim and the stuff. Like you see the epic battle between Marduk and what is it, like the Leviathan. It's like some great water serpent. I forget what the name is, but you see all of this stuff I actually have no problem with this. A lot of people get really upset. They're like, no, this was like completely pure and unadulterated. And I'm like, no, all these cultures and spiritualities kind of fused within each other and kind of adapted from each other. And like Mark was saying, it's a cultural and I would say spiritual narrative that people had. And if you ask a lot of modern day Jews, a lot of them take that same position. Tiamat, yeah, I think I might be right. You have a lot of these, you have this spiritual narrative that people are carrying and holding on to, and that's what it is. It's a spiritual story. If you look at Jewish tradition now, a lot of people have these spiritual narratives about things like the Exodus. And if you ask some of the folks, secular humanist Jews, they'll say it's a story. They don't necessarily say it literally happened. It's a story. It's a spiritual narrative that you're tied to. Like we're tied to in the United States to President Washington and the cherry tree, that he was so honest and truthful with the cherry tree. Did this really happen? Who knows? It's a myth and a story that makes people feel connected. And I think that is that's the important situation, is that these are spiritual stories that have meaning for people and that carry them. But the problem is, as I think most people on the panel have said, is when it takes it to extreme. And I actually wanted to address something that Earl had said, which was the point about hell. The ancient Israelites didn't even carry this point of hell. They didn't even really know if there was an afterlife at all. Sheol, Gehenna, we don't even know if this afterlife was there. This thing developed throughout time, as we can see with the connection with Hellenism. And I don't see any problem with that. But that's just, these are stories that have developed, and as long as you're not hurting people and it helps you become a good human being, then I think it's fine. That's where I'm at with it.
So my relative feeling that Jesus became a god in some form or fashion because he was here, died, rose. I just don't believe that's true. I think there was a human Jesus that was a preacher. I think there were dozens and dozens of apocalyptic preacher that had gone through some sort of either the Qumran studies or some variation of what the Dead Sea Scrolls were doing, the Marcion movement, some variation of folks knew that there was an occupier coming, were preparing for an occupier coming, and they had plenty of stories to relieve the public and masses in the Jewish population some form of entertainment that started to popularize in the first century. I think one of the biggest problems I have with Jesus being any kind of anything but a human is in the writings of James. And you can read the book of James in about 15 minutes. And in that you find a summary that I equate to the Beatitudes, Sermon on the Mount, and the Sermon on the Plain. I think James picked up the mantle, just as many of the apologists believe, from his brother Jesus. And I think this exemplifies the moment in which all he did was practice his trope and read. We can read what his trope was, his style, his words, whether he was a brother of the physical family or he was the brother in the spirituality of the cause of apocalyptic Jewish preaching at the time and bringing converts to their new cause. When you read the book of James, you don't find the most amazing thing I got to experience with my brother, who is a god. You have the things to make the world a better place while we're under occupation of a power such as the Roman government. There's no story about how I lost my brother and wow, he's back. And to me, that would be the most important thing to Christianity, having a God as its foundation. And that doesn't exist. And therefore, I think Jesus was a human, and humans were just making their way, much like Max said earlier. Humans were making their way through this world just the same. Also, this comment right here. Get back to demons and tell the truth shall set you free. I feel like if there were demons being cast out then and demons are being cast out now, with nearly every single person, man, woman, and child, having a studio in their back pocket, we would have selfies with demons on full display 24/7. It would almost be blasé enough that it doesn't even get a popularity on a YouTube channel if they were there.
I'll do it for free.
See? It would be so commonplace if we hear the politicians, if we hear the preachers from the pulpit thundering away, tell us about how Nancy Pelosi is possessed by demons, the educational system, the financial institutions, the educational institutions, all the things that we hear day in and day out about these demons. I think we would have clear evidence that demons are real. They would be on 1,000 iPhones a day, and we would know. It'd be that simple. Demons don't care about your free will. They don't.
And then, like they say, cross-dressing. Like cross-dressing is entirely cultural. Like there's no gendered clothing. We just decide, like as a culture, what gender is what clothing. Different cultures will have different clothing, gendered clothing. It's ridiculous. Like, yeah. So it's like it's sin to like cross-dress. It's just based on the specific culture. So it's some relative moral like sin depending on the culture. It's so weird. So weird.
It actually exists in many cultures, by the way, like the Hijra in South Asia. There's a group in Mexico. So you have all of these groups in many different places and spaces. So it's actually ancient. So it's very bizarre when people try to say it's some kind of abnormality.
Well, it's not even that. Like people can like cross-dress just to role play, just to be like flamboyant without being gay, without being transgender. Like there's no sin in wearing a dress. There's nothing immoral about me wearing a dress.
Wait, are you telling me every time I've been a femshep in Mass Effect that I've been trans? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, if you choose a female role in a game, you're gender bending, dude. That's a sin.
Well, wow. just remember the first indication in art of Jesus, he is in a Roman tunic, which is essentially a skirt.
Yeah. Long hair.
If I remember correctly, the second and third and fourth art of Jesus is him in a tunic, a Roman tunic.
There is a Muslim cleric in Turkey, I believe. I just saw it on Twitter, so X, take it for what it is, who said that men who don't have beards are causing other men to sin because they look feminine, and it's causing them to be gay or to have impure thoughts if men don't grow beards.
I'm sorry. What?
Okay. Well, Oz, you are a handsome man.
Thank you. I think
you have a beard. You're not doing anything. You've got a beard. It's me that's to blame.
So let me tell you a story, Oz.
I was wearing a tank top on stream, and somebody comes on my stream and says that I was sinning it because I was like trying to make him gay.
Oh boy,
like, dude!
Wow.
If me showing my shoulders is making you have gay thoughts, just might be gay. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it sounds like a them problem. It really does.
And that's okay. I don't care.
Yeah, they obviously do.
We're sorry.
I love how we just interrupt.
Let's wrap the show up. It's gone just over 2 hours. Oz, thanks for doing a shout out to bring it over. This is definitely, without a doubt, the highest amount of live stream views that I've ever had. I think we were up just over 40 at one point, so that blows away anything I've ever had. So All the raid and Matters Now raiders coming in. I appreciate it greatly. And I know I think we've got an audience with Issa's channel as well. Am I pronouncing that right? Is it Issa?
Issa's right. You got it.
Yeah. And so I think we're getting some views from there as well. So I appreciate all of you panel coming on. And I've got a close with a little food for thought that's literally disgusting, but I don't care. I just don't care. So thank you all for coming on. We're going to do a little food for thought, then we're going to do a moment of Zen, and then we're outroed. So cheers all. Thank you for coming. So this is a representation of a galaxy that is just spinning around, and I just want to make the acknowledgement that I somewhat think that we are just nothing but a swirling cosmos of gas and poo and ignited poo. And that I'm just a small, tiny, tiny little piece on a floating rock that is swirling around in this apparently flushed cosmos. And I feel great, but in the scheme of things, the number of planets there are, in the number of galaxies there are, if I'm being told the truth about everything, it is a great deal of insignificance if we've just been flushed. So there is your poo for thought, folks. The poo particle. So, yes. Ever consider that the galaxies resemble a toilet flush? So, we are living on a rock that we fill with poo every day. And we just might be the shitheads that figuratively dwell on it. Huh. All right. Here's your moment of Zen.
Come to the Metropolitan in New York City, one of the most prestigious museums in the entire world, to make a bunch of dick jokes? I did. I sure did. You see, it's thought that in ancient Greece, a large schlong was considered not to be part of male beauty standards. So little. But why? That's right. I'm utilizing my vast knowledge of history to make weenie jokes. You're this man, Hercules. You've just completed the 12 labors, and they erect a giant, hard statue of you. But do you know what's not giant? Your schlong, because that's not a sign of strength or beauty there. You did not want to have this. You wanted to have this. Too big? Is this too big? In times as these, big PPs were considered to be vulgar, against the cultural norm. Too big. You see that face there? That's what they thought about BDE. It's not the size of the boat, it's the motion of the ocean. That motto originates in this part of history. That's a lie. I actually just made that part up. I just assumed. The rest is true. Did I come to the
It's been quite the weenie shrinker out there. I hope everybody stays warm in this winter, except for you, Mark. I know you're on the other side of the planet where it's still summer. So bow tie bless.
Freaking hot. It really is.